Hello and welcome back to my DIY mini pinball build series. This week is a very mixed bag of jobs. With the main body of the cabinet and the back box complete, I can begin to fill in the gaps. Later in the video you will get the opportunity to watch my brain struggle with a very simple problem. The first order of business is the pinball plunger. You might remember I need to attach a sliding potentiometer to the plunger in order for its position to be sensed by the pinball software. There are other designs on Thingiverse which are made for this job, but none of them had this particular combination of plunger and potentiometer, so I designed my own. Ideally, I would have liked to have the plunger attached through the housing for the potentiometer. That way I could be sure of the spacing between them, but the thread on the plunger is only just long enough to go through the wood of the cabinet, and the nut is difficult to access. So I made them separate, and that turned out okay. I went through a few different versions of the design for the housing before landing on this one with the sloped sides for extra stiffness. The box on the end of the plunger that attaches to the blade on the potentiometer is just friction fitted. If it ever slides off, I can put a set screw in the side of it. All I need to do is line up the parts so the plunger moves without putting stress on the slide mechanism and screw it in place. Don't forget always to pilot hole with MDF. And for a reusable hole, pop some PVA glue in there. So I made this board to hold the PC and it works fine, but I wasn't very happy with the end result. The thin plywood I used is very thin, and as the motherboard is fixed directly to it, there's a likelihood it will flex and cause problems down the road. I decided to build another one, and since I had the 3D printer up and running, I thought I would make more of the required parts using that instead of bits of scrap wood. This time I cut a piece of 9mm ply, thick enough that it shouldn't warp, to a smaller overall size. This will make removing and replacing it simpler than the last one, which I struggled to fit inside the cabinet. You've seen how I fitted the motherboard standoffs once already, so I'll spare you a repeat. It went much easier this time, and I managed to get all of the holes to line up perfectly. I want to be able to run wires underneath the PC board, so a couple of lengths of wood to raise it off the base and to help keep the board flat are glued and brad nailed in place. You can see here the white expansion board bracket which I 3D printed. I basically made it to the same dimensions as the wooden one on the old board. I need a way to hold the power supply in place without restricting its airflow. I could also make this on the 3D printer, but it would have been large and have taken many hours to print. So I made a frame which I fixed around the body of the power supply and a bracket on the PC mounting board to which it could be screwed. Yeah, that's definitely going to work better with a battery. No, sorry, that wasn't the bit I was talking about earlier. You'll have to wait a little longer for my best impression of an idiot. A shiny new bracket for the hard drives fixed in the space under the power supply. I placed the SSD on top of the mechanical one this time as I thought it would help protect it a little. Another job complete. The power supply on this version is set back a little to allow room for the power cable to be plugged in without fouling against the bass speaker. I don't have a bit large enough for the hole I need to cut for the bass speaker, so I drew a circle, drilled a small hole and went at it with my jigsaw and a vacuum cleaner. Now I have a better idea of the layout of the components inside, I can begin to fix them in place. The bass speaker did have feet that held it off of any surface it would be placed upon, but I removed those. To replace the feet and to give me a way of fixing it in place, I printed some more brackets. They have some support material in the mounting holes that needs removing. I thought I would try something different. For the fan hole in the base I need an 18mm hole, and guess what, I don't have an 18mm hole saw. I remembered I have a hole cutter that's been sitting in my toolbox for many years. I've never used it in anger and I thought I should give it a go for giggles. It wasn't a very giggly experience. I cut through as far as I could from the top and then flipped the cabinet over and started cutting from below. I didn't manage to get through, so tried again from the top. Again, it didn't make it all the way through. So I resorted to using a precision hammer instead. Worked a treat. The fan will be connected to a spare hard drive power output. I've fixed a connector block for power here. This will have 12 and 5 volt, so I'll be able to run LED lights from this too. Now, this looks messy, and to be fair, it is. This board is to go across the base of the back of the cabinet, below the door, and will house the power cord, fused inlet and the PC power button. Where I've placed the bass speaker, the wires that come out of that foul this board, and I need to cut channel to give them room. It was quite late when I did this, and I couldn't use power tools, so I attacked it with a chisel. Made a bit of a mess, but it did work. But it looked messy, so the next day I took it into the fresh air and routed it out to make it look neater. One last hole I need is a way to route the cables between the base and the back box. So while I was out in the garden, I marked out a slot and drilled some holes for the jigsaw. Watch now as my poor brain attempts to work this puzzle out. Turn it over. It won't fit in there. Turn it over and cut from the other side. Brain is still whirring away. It won't fit. Turn it over. After walking away and slapping my palm against my head, I realised that maybe by turning it over, that would give me the access I needed. Well done, me! As I'd taken the screen out and removed the fixing screws, I dabbed some wood glue into each hole to prevent them from breaking up. In the base of the cabinet, I'd not been able to pre-drill some of the holes in the MDF when I'd screwed the PC board in place. Having removed it, you can see the way that MDF bulges when you don't drill pilot holes. I cut the bulge off with a sharp chisel and dabbed in some more PVA to keep the holes sound. The base is too heavy to keep lugging out into the garden with my dodgy back, so I cut the access hole indoors. I totally forgot to run the vacuum cleaner to keep the dust out, but I did wear a mask. And then I remembered the Hoover. Right, it's time to put this back together. I'll have to dismantle it all again later when I need to paint the base coats. I was going to try to fit these amps so the volume controls were accessible from the outside. This would have been preferable, but I don't think it's totally necessary. I will be able to control the main volume within software with button combinations on the front of the machine, so I decided just to leave these inside the cabinet. I'll make the back door easily accessible if these ever need adjusting. For the back panel power supply, I have a fused kettle lead socket and a momentary button for the PC switch. I could mount them directly into the MDF as I did on Project Terracade. Check out the playlist in the link if you missed that. But as I was in full swing with the 3D printer, I decided to use that to make a panel. It's a basic thing, just a flat sheet of plastic with a rectangular hole and a round hole and some other small holes for screws and beveled corners. Nice and simple. This took 90 minutes to print, and I was around 40 minutes into the print before I realised I'd forgotten to change the filament to black. So, white looks pretty good, doesn't it? I can always print another one, and if I don't like it with whatever colour scheme I end up painting, I'll do that. I went with this thin blade as I thought it might allow me to get around the corners better. Of course, I'd already drilled the corners, so a bigger bit would have been better. That's not in properly. Told you. Couple of notches for the bolts that hold the power socket in place. And that's it for this week. As you watch the footage I recorded of the backglass screen being decased, something that should have been featured in a previous video, I'll say my goodbyes. I feel progress is being made now. My next objectives will be to get everything fitted and working, but in a way that makes it easily removable. I want everything to be modular so it's easy to work on in the future. Big targets that I'm not ready to start yet are the legs, funds required, and the glass to cover the Playfield screen, again, funds. At some point soon, maybe before the next episode, I hope to start painting. That will signal we're starting to see the end of the project beginning to start to approach. But thank you for watching this far. It's a long build, but I think the big stuff is all done now. Oh, I also need to make back doors. And we can concentrate on the small details. And the coin door on the front. Yep, Hardly anything left at all. If you like this video, do the cool YouTube dance like all the cool kids do and click some buttons. They will make me smile. I'm not kidding. Every sub I get makes me smile. Keep leaving comments, asking questions and making suggestions. Knowing that you're out there keeps me motivated and drives me to make progress. I'm not joking. And make sure you are following all the social medias. We've recently set up a Facebook page and a Discord for you to come and say hi and hang out. All the links are in the description. Bye!